Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our podcast. My name is Chris.
And my name is James.
And we're the Formula One Bros.
Just two twins with a love of F1 to share our thoughts on everything in the world of Formula One.
And we are 1 week down from launch week. We've seen 5 cars. We have 5 left to go. So we're going to talk about all of the liveries, the cars, the launches for all of the 5 teams that we've seen so far, and we're recording this moments after seeing the AlphaTauri launch. But before we get to AlphaTauri, we start with our hometown team, Haas F1.
Yes. So the first thing I'm going to say about it, I love it. I think this is one of my favorite Haas liveries. Now, I will say a lot of people didn't like it because they thought it was simple. But personally for me, not just in my taste in Formula One liveries, but in life in general, I like simple. I appreciate simplicity. So I think back to some of my favorite liveries, which have been like the Brawn GP. Plain white with just a little bit of yellow striping. Some of the Ferrari liveries from like 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and even last year. It was just very simple, plain red liveries. So I really like simple. I don't like a lot of busyness, and it looks very sleek. It looks very clean. It looks very homogeneous from the front to the back, which I'll talk about some that we've seen so far that don't. One in particular. But I really like it. I really like the look. I think this is my favorite Haas look. It looks very clean. It looks very simple. So yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the 2018 Haas. There's a little bit of an element to that. There's a little bit more black. I think they've gotten away from the white base livery, which I think is good because I don't know, that just, for me, it just kind of, I associate that look with everything that happened in 2021 for them, which I'm glad it seems like they're getting away from. They have a new title sponsor in MoneyGram that hopefully will bear better fruit than Uralkali and Rich Energy.
Yes.
And that is a title sponsorship that is helping them spend at the budget cap, which is great news for them.
Yes.
So I think this livery signals kind of them getting out of the woods a little bit. They've weathered the storm, and I think they're now at a point where they can really start to get back to their 2018 ways.
Yeah, no more champagne problems.
No. Well, hopefully they have plenty of champagne problems from getting on the podium so much, but
I guess how that works.
In our wildest dreams. That was like 3
5.
Taylor Swift references, and good for us.
Oh my God.
If you haven't guessed, we love Taylor Swift.
I've got more loaded in the chamber. I'm ready to go.
So anyway, yeah, I think it's good from them. Talking about the car now, I think they're a team that's gone for evolution over revolution.
Yeah.
I think their design is a little bit tighter, and it's also a little bit more Ferrari-esque. It's a little less bulky. They've redesigned. I think their side pod inlets are definitely way more Ferrari-esque. They've got the letterbox slit opening. So I think it looks tighter, it looks sleeker. But yeah, I think that team is going a little bit more for evolution over revolution, because I think the biggest thing affecting Haas over the past, well, especially last year, has just been unreliability. That's their biggest thing. They have a car that's quick, but it breaks easily. So that leads me into the next thing, which is how we think they're going to do compared to last year.
Firstly, I think they will improve. I'll say that. I think they will improve. Mainly, I think that improvement will come in the way of the fact that the Ferrari engine is, as a whole, is just built better this year.
agree.
It's a lot more efficient. From what we've seen so far, it looks like all the teams that are running Ferrari engines will have significant improvement on that standpoint.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a big improvement for them. It doesn't look like they've changed too much with the chassis and the aerodynamics of the car. It doesn't really look like it's that has changed too much. Now, the other thing is they finally have 2 veteran drivers back at the helm. So last year,
very experienced hands.
last year we saw a lot of brilliant moments from Kevin Magnussen. And we have seen some really great moments from Nico Hülkenberg in the past. So I think having 2 veteran drivers who've been in the sport for quite some time, I think Nico Hülkenberg longer than Kevin Magnussen. I think that'll do them a lot of good. I think that's where they will improve them, see the most improvement is the fact that they have 2 veteran drivers at the helm.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going to come. I agree in their driver pairing, and this is no disrespect to Mick Schumacher at all. He's a great driver, and I think very deserving of a Mercedes reserve role. And if he does well there, I think I think there's no reason why he can't go in and be the number 2 to George Russell when Lewis Hamilton leaves, when he retires. But Kevin Magnussen also had his inconsistencies last year, so I think I think hopefully a more consistent Kevin Magnussen paired with already a consistent Nico Hülkenberg that can score points when they're on offer, I think is going to be great for them. I was initially very, very down on Haas signing Hülkenberg over Schumacher.
I know a lot of people were.
I think initially, but if you think about it for more than 3 seconds, I think...
Which most people posting on Twitter don't.
No. And myself included, initially after seeing that. But I think if you think about it for more than 3 seconds, I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's probably not what they would have want their first choice to have been, because that was obviously Daniel Ricciardo. But I think out of all the drivers that they could have gotten, I think Nico Hülkenberg was probably going to be the best one.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the feedback I've been saying is they got a driver who's never scored a podium. They shouldn't be a team that's coming into this year that's all right, our goal is to get podiums. That shouldn't be their goal, because if that's their goal, they're going to be woefully disappointed.
Yeah.
I think they need their goal should be consistently competing to get points. And I think with both drivers, and I think with Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg, they have the ability to do that. And that's why I think Nico Hülkenberg is a great person for that role.
The last thing that I'll say on the Nico Hülkenberg thing, because I don't want to talk about it too much, but I will say that I think his statistic of most races without scoring a podium greatly overshadows how great of a midfield driver he really is. I mean, you look at 2019. He was probably one of the most consistent midfield drivers.
Yeah.
At all, because that was before Racing Point really improved to being a race winning team in 2020. Daniel Ricciardo obviously scored some podiums, but I think he was one of the most consistent and reliable midfield point scorers, not just in 2019, but out of his entire career. I mean, don't forget that in 2020, when he subbed in for a race for Sergio Perez at Racing Point, he qualified 3rd in Germany. He's we always make fun of the Nico Hülkenberg super sub thing, but he is that for a reason.
Yeah.
I think it'll take time for him to get used to the car, but yeah, I think Nico Hülkenberg is great and woefully underrated.
Yeah.
So that's Haas. The next one that we saw was not the RB19. It was the RB19, but it wasn't the
was
RB19.
Red Bull, yeah. So
Let's talk livery first.
livery first. I mean, no surprise, it's the exact same as last year. There's some minor differences with like where like sponsors are placed and things like that. I think the yellow on the front, we kind of said last year it looked like a banana.
Yeah.
But the yellow on the front is not as long.
And it's not as bright.
Yeah. Overall, though, I mean, there's not really much different. I mean, they're one of the most recognizable brands in motorsports, so there's no reason to change it.
Yeah.
At all. And yeah, I'm kind of at the point now with that though. Like, I like it. It's a good livery. It's a classic livery. But I'm also now at the point where like, maybe let's spice it up a little bit. Maybe let's change it up.
Maybe, but here's the thing. You know, I think by the time Red Bull's success wanes, because it will eventually, you know, just like, you know, McLaren's success waned and Ferrari's success waned and Williams' success waned. Once it wanes and we're looking back on F1 20, 30 years from now, I think that Red Bull livery is going to be as iconic as some of the most iconic liveries in history, like the Marlboro McLaren, the Vodafone McLaren, the West McLaren, you know, the 2000s Ferrari, the Jordan 191, like those liveries, you know, this like the 7-Up on the Jordan, you know, that livery is going to be up there with some of the most iconic liveries, and it's a brand more than it is a paint scheme. So I think, you know, I said this last year, and I will say it every year that they don this livery. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, it's a classic livery. Yeah. I still think my favorite livery is the Vodafone McLaren liveries, but that's getting besides the point.
Now with the launch, I will say they had this huge launch. They brought in celebrities. They did all these interviews, this whole lot, which it was awesome launch. Like, except when they got to the car, they did all of that just to launch the exact same car from last year.
Yeah, they launched the RB19, but it was the RB18 sitting out on the platform. Yeah,
but
on the stage.
What bugs me about that though is they advertised this is the RB19.
Yeah,
like this is it, but it was the 2018 or the 20. It was last year's car.
It was incredibly misleading and disappointing. Which I understand. If you're a world champion team like that, I understand not showing all of your cards.
Yeah, you want to keep that close to the chest.
But these launches are not for the teams; they're for the fans. Yeah. And so at some point you have to give the fans something. Mm-hmm. You know, and they did this last year too, where the car that they launched was literally the Formula One spec car that was launched in Great Britain in 2021.
Yeah.
You know, it was literally completely featureless. And then it wasn't until shakedown. So Red Bull have a habit of doing this, but it is so infuriating that they build up and build up and build up. This is the RB19, and it literally wasn't. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, one thing I think is cool for me, and I made a short about it, but they didn't announce the partnership with Ford. That won't come into play until 2026. But personally for me, as an American, seeing a very well-known American company connected with Formula One does bring a little bit of pride with that, which I think is, I mean, Ford has this huge racing pedgree, you know, here in the States, like especially with NASCAR. NASCAR is huge. IMSA is another one. With all the endurance racing, I mean, you know, even, you know, made movies about Ford versus Ferrari, that type of thing, which I know there are quite a bit of memes and TikToks made. It was like, oh, well, bringing back the Ford versus Ferrari, which I think was funny. But I think that's really cool. Yeah. I know a lot of people were expecting, oh, they're partnering with Ford. Maybe we'll get a different livery. But then you realize, oh, well, they're not officially starting that partnership until 2026. So maybe in 2026 we'll get a different livery. But who knows? Maybe it'll just say Ford on the back of the car instead of Honda.
Yeah, or like their Aston Martin
Yeah.
title sponsorship.
Yeah.
I
Like the
think-
car wasn't green.
So two things about Ford. I think the thing that everybody forgets about Ford, that aside from Ferrari, they're they are the second winningest power or engine manufacturer in Formula One history by way of Cosworth, because they purchased Cosworth, which was their racing engine, which was specifically racing engines. So through Cosworth, Ford is, aside from Ferrari, is the most successful engine manufacturer. So a lot of people were shocked that Ford, a company like Ford was doing that, especially when earlier they were tapped to partner with Porsche.
Yeah.
Porsche, I think, a lot of people were surprised, but I think a lot of people forget about the success that
Yeah.
Ford had in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, when you look back at the history, you're like, oh wow, yeah, they do have a lot of success.
And the other thing is, I almost think I was so disappointed in the launch that I almost think that the Ford partnership overshadowed the whole launch. I think that was the most impressive and the biggest piece of news and content to come out of that day from Red Bull was
no
the
one
Ford
was
partnership.
I don't know of anyone that was expecting that. So the launch as a spectacle was awesome. That was a great launch to watch. Except for, seeing the last year's car.
So let's talk car now. I mean, we've seen like screenshots of their new car from the shakedown that they had today.
Yeah.
So it looks like they're also, kind of like Haas, they're going for evolution over revolution.
Just making some minor fixes.
And honestly, that's all they need.
They of all the teams to improve, like they don't really need to improve much. My biggest thing though for them is with this upcoming season, if they want to be successful, which they were already very successful last year, but if they want to be even more successful, I think they need to hit the ground running right from the get-go. And had Ferrari not had their issues that they were having with their engine and had a reliable engine, we would have seen Ferrari win the championship because of Red Bull's mistakes and Red Bull's reliability just in the first couple races. Now, they did fix that, and Red Bull had an amazing season. But I think with Ferrari's improvements, with Mercedes' improvements that have been hyped up, I think if Red Bull want to win the title again, they have to be as successful as they were at the end of last season, right from the very beginning.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to hit the ground running, especially considering Ferrari and Mercedes. If they improve the way that they're expecting to, they're going to have to hit the ground running, which also means they're probably going to have to design a car that is a little bit more Sergio Perez friendly, which there are rumors coming out of Milton Keynes that that's the case.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that's actually true, but I really do think that if Ferrari and Mercedes are going to be as competitive as they're supposed to be this year, it's going to be really important that not only do they hit the ground running, but they have a car that can work for both of their drivers.
Yep.
Because even with the most dominant car and with Ferrari having all of its issues, Sergio Perez still came in third in the Drivers' Championship, and there's no reason that he should have. And it's just because he was not nearly as close, and we know how good Sergio Perez is. So he needs a car that can work for him, and he's pushing for that at Milton Keynes. If he really is the long-term solution to Red Bull's second driver problem, which I think for the moment he is,
Oh, yeah,
they
100%.
need to give him a better car.
Yes. Yeah. One that's not so Max centered. And I understand why it has been for so long, because Max really was like the driver for so long. And they were just, their second seat was just a revolving door of drivers for really since 2018 when Daniel left. But having a car that's able to work well with both drivers and is able to be adapted for both drivers, I think is going to be another thing that will propel them into success as a team.
Yeah. If they want to keep, the championship, that's what they're going to have to do for sure. But yeah, other than that, I think Red Bull, their biggest thing is they're just gonna, keep doing what they're doing. So up next was, I think, one of my favorites so far was Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Their livery.
Yeah. Williams, I mean, I thought last year their livery was probably one of my favorites to look at. But this year with Williams, they've made some improvements on the livery design. Some minor detail things about it. I think first off with the coloring, last year they had to take a lot of like paint early on. They had to take a lot of paint off the car just to get weight off of the car because the gloss finish of paint weighs a lot more than matte.
It's a lot heavier.
It's a lot heavier. So they took a lot of the coloring off. So a lot of the car last year was black, but this year they went with a full matte finish on the car. So they've been able to add a lot more of that coloring back. So where there was a lot of black last year, there's now blue, which I think looks really good. And I have to say, my favorite part of the entire livery is this the air box that's the Duracell battery.
I
think that's the most clever incorporation of a sponsor I think I've seen ever.
No,
it's
for sure.
So cool.
I don't think it's my favorite livery that I've seen so far, but that feature is 100% my favorite. That is so creative.
It's so clever. It's like like you think about it like, oh duh, like it's shaped like a battery, make it look like a battery, but like no one would ever thought it. It's so cool looking.
I think my favorite part about the Williams livery is the fact that now this is the second year that they've sort of done this design. Ever since Martini left the team, they've had a different livery, every year. But now they're starting to, in the Dorilton era, they're starting to have it looks like a very consistent brand.
Yeah.
And that is also because, they're running the same design on their Williams Driver Academy drivers in Formula 2 and Formula 3. So they run those kind of like all the Red Bull Academy drivers run the Red Bull livery. So they're doing a little bit more like that. And I think they're just starting to create more and more of a cohesive brand.
Which is good.
And which is great. And that's a great livery to do it with. I think it's very modern, but it's very Williams, and I really, really like it a lot.
Yeah, and this livery looks a lot more cohesive than the since Martini left. I think this is the most cohesive looking livery that we've seen. Even now, more so this year, since they were able to put a lot of that coloring back in, where they had to strip the paint away from last year. I think this is the most cohesive look. I mean, the Martini livery is a classic look.
Yeah.
But since Martini has left, I think this is the best look, and it's and you're right, you're absolutely right with the branding. It's so nice to see starting to build consistent branding back that we haven't seen from Williams.
Yeah, it's nice. Talking about launch, it was a great simple launch. It was nice. Will Buxton emceed, and he was a great host. They did driver interviews, and it was very short and sweet. It was exactly what it was almost the polar opposite of, I think, the Red Bull one, whereas Red Bull was doing a lot of Red Bull brand. It was for the brand. They interviewed a lot of Red Bull athletes. They had a lot of people talking that I think clearly didn't really know a lot about Formula One, didn't know how to really talk about it. It just kind of felt
showy,
forced and showy and disjointed, but this was a very Formula One launch, and it was very good as a fan of Formula One and as a historic fan of the Williams team. I think that was a great launch. They did it justice. Will Buxton did a great job.
It was pleasant to watch.
It was great to watch. And their car, I think it looks a lot more cohesive. They're sticking with a little bit more Red Bull-esque, side pod design that was changed mid last year, as compared to the Mercedes Zero side pod design that they started the season with. I think they're refining that a little bit. They're going a little bit more for evolution over revolution. So, it looks great. How do you think How do you think they're going to do compared to last year?
Well, I really hope they improve. I'm tired. With a team like Williams, who has one of the most historically successful Formula One teams throughout Formula One's history, like I want to see them back.
Yeah.
I want to see them not be the last team on the grid.
Yeah.
For once, I just want to see them not the last team on the grid, and I think they can do it this year. I don't see a whole lot of improvement. I think the addition of James Vowles from Mercedes is great, but I think it'll take a couple years to see the fruits of their labor from that. With that addition, so I don't see them improving too much, but maybe in a couple of years we'll be having a different conversation.
I will always say that any driver is an improvement over Nicholas Latifi.
Yeah.
So I think in that regards, Logan Sargent is great for that team. I think a lot of people see that fourth place in Formula 2 and think, someone else should have gotten that drive, or maybe Mick Schumacher should have gotten that drive. Maybe Daniel Ricciardo should have gotten that drive. And to be completely honest, Logan Sargent was not their first or second choice, I believe.
I still think he's a good one, though.
I still think he's a great choice. I do not believe that he's incapable of driving that car. I still think he's going to be an improvement over Nicholas Latifi. He was an FIA karting world champion. The only other FIA karting world champions on the grid, Lando Norris and Fernando Alonso.
Yeah.
So I think that he's in great company.
Yeah.
He is a very capable set of hands. I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to bed into the team, but I think him and Alex Albon are going to be great. Alex Albon already is great. But yeah, like you said, they're making some improvements, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get them to elevate them off the back of the grid.
Yeah.
I think maybe in a year or two they have some
Yeah.
potential to do that, but
Yeah.
just not this year.
Yeah. I think come maybe two years from now, we'll be having a different conversation about Williams. But yeah, I'm excited to see what that car looks like on track. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, for my favorite.
I think both of our favorites.
And it's going to take, in my opinion, it's going to take one of the other teams having an amazing, amazing livery to not dethrone it as my favorite.
Mercedes looking at you, give us the all black. We want it.
Yeah. Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, that livery.
It looks so good.
So good.
I mean, not a lot has changed from last year, other than the fact, like the way the livery is designed, other than the fact that the white is now black.
It looks so good.
It looks so good. The red is a little bit different too.
Yeah.
In the past, the red, it was so scarlet, it was maroon. But this year it's a lot more like cherry red.
Yeah.
It's a lot brighter. It's a lot more vibrant. They're not going with the matte finish on it. It is like a chrome, or a glossy finish with it, which I think will look really cool under the lights. It's just such
the black,
a good livery.
The black
Oh,
is
man.
the black is exposed carbon fiber, which
gives it
a really cool look to that part.
And I will say, I think it's very small, but one of my favorite features is the green 4-leaf clover on the airbox. I think it looks, I think it just looks really, really good.
Yeah.
One of my favorites so far.
Top to bottom, front to back, I think, all in all, I think the best livery so far. And speaking of cars, I think this is the really truly the first team that we've seen gone for a complete
Overhaul.
revolution revolution of the car as compared to an evolution. Especially the biggest thing that ailed that team last year was rear end stability, which was all over the place.
Yeah.
Joe and Valtteri complained about it all the time. It was very limiting to the car. It was so fast. It broke so easily. They had the most retirements out of any other team.
Yeah.
So it looks like they've completely redesigned the rear end,
Yeah.
which fixes their cooling problem. They redesigned their gearbox casing, and their gearbox casing and packaging looks identical to Red Bull. So we know it's quick. They're channeling a lot more air to the diffuser to make it work harder. I think they
floor is different,
reworked
too.
their side pods a little bit differently. Their floor is a little bit different.
Last year their side pod was just one unit, and now it looks like it's almost like two different units. Like the side pod, it goes significantly far down, and then the rear ducts are protruding out a little, so it almost makes it look like the side pods are two different units, which I think gives it a really cool silhouette.
And that is what is helping channel the air back to the diffuser. They've completely reworked their cooling system, which their cooling was their biggest problem, I think, in terms of reliability last year, was their cooling pumps and packaging. So that's been completely redesigned. Their floor gives them a little bit more. It seems to give them a little bit, just the way that Alpine and Red Bull were able to do it last year. It seals the floor a little bit more to give the ground effect a little bit more power, and which also reduces the porpoising a little bit. So I think they're in a really good position, and I truly think that they are going to be the most improved of the 5 that we've seen so far. I think they're going to be the most improved compared to last year out of the 5 we've seen.
It really does seem all of the things that plagued them last year, they've created solutions that will fix it. Now, whether or not they actually achieve what we think they will, that's yet to be seen. But even even having improvements with the Ferrari engine, because that's another thing that plagued them, was their engine just kept breaking. It was a fast car. I think had they not had the reliability issues that they had, I think Alfa Romeo could have finished 5th or 6th in the championship, not second to last. So I think having that, even just the fact that the engine is improved, I think is a huge step up. And then all of the other little cosmetic things that they've improved on and come up with solutions with, I'm really, really excited to see this team. I think they could finish 4th or 5th in the championship.
Their chassis last year really locked them into one design philosophy, and that really limited the amount of development that they could do on that car. And so now I think they've fixed a lot of the rear end problems that they had last year, which is where they wanted to concentrate the development, but they just couldn't.
Yeah. I'm calling it now. I'm not afraid to say it. I'll say it. Chris won't say it, but I'll say it.
I'm not going to
Alfa
say
Romeo, 4th place in the championship. I'll say it right now. I don't care. Bring the heat. I'll say it.
I'm gonna clip this, and I'm gonna save it
please.
for the end of the season.
We'll just post a little short of just that clip, and then me like,
I cannot
sorry.
wait for social media to roast you on.
Oh,
on
bring
this.
it on.
So
bring it on.
if you're watching this, we're gonna clip this on TikTok and post it tonight.
Yeah.
Please roast him.
Please, make fun of me. Bring the heat.
But also, it would be great to see Alfa Romeo finish 4th. I think that would be
Right?
awesome.
Right?
They coming from where that team has come from in 2017.
Yeah.
With literally hemorrhaging money, almost not even making it out of 2017, to finishing 6th last year in the Constructors' Championship. Which is the highest that they've been in Fred Vasseur's tenure. Now, I know Fred is leaving, but a lot of the things that have been created for this year were influenced from last year. So I think this could very well be, I think Alfa Romeo are in a great place to do really, really well this year. And I'm really excited to seeing how that car runs.
Cannoli, do you want to put any input into Alfa Romeo?
Nah, he's just vibing. Just no thoughts, just vibes.
Yep.
Cool.
So that takes us to the launch that we saw just today.
Yeah. Moments before we started recording.
AlphaTauri.
And I'll say, of the 5 we've seen so far, this is my least favorite.
It's my least favorite livery and my least favorite launch.
Yeah, the launch. Well, let's just talk about the livery. Before we get to the launch, let's just talk about the livery. I said with Haas, it looks cohesive, and it's like Haas's livery is like nice and cohesive from front to back. And I mentioned that there is a team that we'll talk about that does not have that, and AlphaTauri is that team.
Yeah.
It looks like 3 different designs all kind of mashed together.
Yeah.
And you've said this before about the 2021 Williams livery, but like it looks like 3 different departments were in charge of creating the 3 parts of the car. They didn't communicate with anyone, and they just mashed it together.
Yeah.
It's like the front of the car looks good. the middle of the car looks good. The back of the car looks good, but put together, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not a cohesive design.
And because it's not cohesive, it just looks busy. And I said earlier, I love simplicity. And you think all those liveries that I named before, they were very cohesive designs. This just isn't.
Yeah, it's exactly the reason why I didn't like McLaren's last year.
Sorry,
but I
McLaren
liked
fans.
McLaren's in 2019.
Yes.
And 2020.
Yeah.
And 2021. It was a simple design. It was cohesive. I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I think once they get on track, I think it might be a little bit different. But
The other thing I don't like about it, I'll say this. I like the splashes of red. The fact that there are splashes of red in it.
I mean,
But
red. Come on.
yeah, red. But I don't like how it was incorporated. It kind of just looked like we have to put red somewhere, so let's just find a place to put it.
Yeah.
Rather than like incorporating the red into the livery, like we've seen with like other teams do with sponsors. It just looks. I just don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't like it. Yeah, and I mean, and the same thing goes for the launch too. I think
The launch was like a minute and a half video.
It was a minute and a half video. There were no driver interviews. There was nothing. It was just a minute and a half video.
We didn't even see multiple angles of the car.
It was one angle. It was a minute and a half of Yuki and Pierre walking around New York.
And like them bringing like a package.
Sorry, not Pierre.
on a
Nick
plane.
DeVries. Oh my gosh.
Like a package on a plane, and like it just wasn't. I don't know.
It was incredibly underwhelming.
It was. I was very disappointed.
Yep. But let's talk car a little bit. Another team that I think has gone for evolution. The side pods are a little bit different, but still have the similar a similar characteristic. Which AlphaTauri side pods last year were very unique. They were very long, very skinny, and very sculpted.
Yeah.
And I think they're keeping with that design.
Although the dip of the side pod going down towards the back isn't as sharp as it was last year. I didn't notice that.
I think they've redesigned it. I think all of the teams so far are sort of taking cues from Red Bull and sculpting the side pods towards the rear suspension and the diffuser.
Yeah, because that's what Red Bull was so successful at last year.
Yeah, and
I mean, they won the World Championship, so why not copy them?
Yeah, so it's not exactly Red Bull's side pods. It's not like what Aston Martin did in the middle of the year, the green Red Bull. But it's the way that it's sculpted. Again, it's the philosophy of channeling air to make the diffuser work harder, and that was what they were so successful at doing last year. And that was the thing that was so puzzling about why the Ferrari was as good as it was, because it didn't look like it did that.
Yeah.
So, again, with the car, evolution over revolution. I think the biggest thing that I'm not convinced that they're going to be as improved at the start of the season compared to the end of the season, but I'm hoping that they just have a much bigger capacity for development.
Yeah, because that's
was the thing.
What they need. They started strong, like a strong midfield team last year, but as other teams started developing, they just stayed stagnant.
Yeah.
And because they stayed stagnant, it looked like they were regressing through the season. And I think of all the teams, like they gained the least amount of time. The only other team that did worse was Ferrari, which technically lost time because they had to detune the engines.
Yeah.
But they just weren't able to improve that car last year.
So I think the make or break thing for AlphaTauri this year is going to be whether or not they have a good capacity to develop the car and they can keep up with the development. I think it was a little bit of an Alfa Romeo situation as well, where they kind of cornered themselves into a design philosophy that they didn't have a whole lot of room to get out of.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do a whole lot. They had upgrades that came through and didn't work as the way that they intended. So that put them back even further, and things just came through the pipeline slowly. So I think just making sure not only that they come through quicker, but they come through and they work.
Yeah.
In terms of developments, I think that's going to be a make or break thing for AlphaTauri.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think seeing if they can develop the car the way that they need to, I think that'll be the improvement. As to where I think they'll finish, I don't really know. I don't really know, but so those are our thoughts on AlphaTauri.
Yep.
So
And that concludes tonight's episode.
Yeah.
I think we'll be back again after the next couple launches, which are going to come in very quick succession. Monday the 13th, we have Aston Martin and McLaren.
Yep.
Tuesday the 14th, we have Ferrari.
Mercedes on the 15th.
And then Alpine on the 16th. So they're going to come in 4 days. We're going to get 5 liveries. So we will be back with you for another episode talking about the next 5
Yep.
after Alpine launches.
Yeah. And then pretty shortly after that, we'll be right in the winter testing. Can't believe it's already almost here.
Oh, thank God.
Thank God.
It's Formula One winter testing and baseball spring training. Like pitchers and catchers reporting. Like those are the 2 days that I am counting down to right now.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I cannot believe we're already almost at the 2023 season.
Thank God.
Of Formula
I
One.
miss Formula One.
I do too. It's one of the greatest sports in the world.
Yep.
So, 2 things for you all, or 3 things for you all. 1, like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. Make sure you follow us on all of your social medias, YouTube. Check us out. And TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all of those things. The second thing, let us know of the 5 that you've seen so far, which livery is your favorite. And third, let us know which liveries you all are excited for coming up next. I can tell you the ones that I'm most intrigued by is Mercedes, because they have been teasing silver, black, pink. I don't. They posted a picture of like pink paint. They were painting the livery and it was pink, like they teased the Ineos red in 2020. So yeah, doing some really interesting things. I think that's the one that I'm most intrigued
I'm excited
about.
for Aston Martin.
Aston Martin, Alpine are is another one because I just love that electric blue.
Obviously
Ferrari because we're big Ferrari fans. But anyway, let us know what you think. Let us know what you're excited for, and we will see you next time.
Yep.